stories of HR.
The stories HR tells itself.
I want you to picture the career page of, well, like almost any modern company out there right now. Or if you happen to be in an office, just walk down to the break room and look at the wall.
Yeah, I can guarantee what's on it.
Right. I mean, I can almost guarantee you're going to see two words painted in massive, friendly Helvetica letters.
People first.
Exactly. People first. It has become the ultimate corporate promise, right? Like you just see it everywhere.
Oh, it is entirely ubiquitous. I mean, you see it on the walls in the all-hands slide decks, printed on the onboarding swag. As an HR professional who has been behind the curtain for years, I can tell you it has become the default setting.
Right. The default corporate culture.
Yeah, it's what every company just feels obligated to say these days.
Okay, let's unpack this, because if you are an everyday employee, or especially if you are a new manager trying to figure out how to build your very first team, that slogan sounds fantastic.
Oh, absolutely. It sounds like the kind of place where you actually want to spend 40 hours of your week.
Exactly. This is our very first episode of the Lies of HR podcast, a deep dive into Martin's notes from the past 16 years about the so often used mantra of people first.
Very often used.
It really is. And our mission today is to explore why that comforting slogan is, in practice, a completely dishonest facade.
And more importantly, we are going to look at the mechanics of how leaders can build real, unbreakable trust with their teams without ever relying on that corporate marketing.
Right, getting away from the fluff.
Because the gap between that warm, fuzzy slogan on the wall and the cold, hard economic reality of how a business actually operates is exactly where all trust is lost.
Well, I'm going to step into the shoes of the earnest believer here for a second, because my immediate reaction is to defend the idea. I mean, doesn't saying people first create a positive environment?
You would think so, sure.
Right. Shouldn't caring for the people doing the actual work be the primary goal of any decent manager? It just feels incredibly cynical to look at a team and say, well, no, you don't come first.
Yeah, I get that. And the instincts behind the slogan are genuinely good. Like creating a positive environment, offering real development, caring for the human beings on your team. Those are objectively sound business practices.
Right. Nobody's saying be a jerk.
Exactly. The problem isn't the care. The problem is the absolute ranking implied by the word first. It's a well-meant facade that simply cannot hold up under pressure.
Because the pattern is incredibly predictable, right?
Fully predictable. A company means it, genuinely, sincerely means it during the good times when cash is flowing.
Sure, when the margins are fat.
Right. But then the macroeconomic environment shifts. Investors demand better margins. Growth just stalls out. And suddenly, a hard call has to be made, a restructuring, a massive cost cut.
And the people who were supposedly first are the ones who are walked out the door.
Every single time.
Which feels like a profound bait and switch. But wait, isn't there a middle ground here? Can a company balance shareholder returns while still, prioritizing its employees?
Well, to understand why that balance is almost impossible in a corporate structure, we really have to look at the underlying mechanics of modern business. We have to go back to 1970.
1970, okay.
Yeah. The economist Milton Friedman wrote a foundational essay arguing that the sole social responsibility of business is to increase its profits and serve its shareholders.
Right, which society debates the morality of constantly.
Constantly. But legally and structurally, he was describing the reality of the machine. I mean, boards of directors literally have a fiduciary duty to maximize shareholder value.
They can be sued if they don't.
Exactly. In their absolute purest form, companies are economic engines. They exist to outcompete rivals and generate returns. They do not exist to serve employees.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, that is a stark operational reality. So if you are a publicly traded company and Vanguard or BlackRock is demanding a return on their investment, the CEO cannot legally just say, sorry, we missed our targets because we put our people first.
No, they can't. The capital structure simply doesn't allow it.
It's literally built out of the equation.
Precisely. So when you literally tell employees they are first, meaning they rank above the very reason the company legally exists, you have made a promise that the economic reality of the market will eventually force you to break.
Wow.
And from an HR perspective, the fallout on the ground is just devastating.
How so? Like, what does that look like day to day?
Well, when employees sense that inevitable gap between what leadership says and what leadership does, the psychological contract just shatters. Motivation tanks. Stress and burnout climb exponentially.
And I imagine your top performers just leave.
Or immediately.
Huh.
The ones who have options, they just walk out the door. The failure of people first isn't because caring is wrong. It fails because it lies to the workforce about the fundamental trade-offs of capitalism.
It's the equivalent of telling someone you will always catch them, but you are standing on a trapdoor that a group of shareholders holds the lever to.
That is a perfect way to put it. You have no business making that promise.
And we don't even have to look back to the 1970s or debate economic theory to see this trapdoor open. I mean, we can just look at the massive market shifts over the last couple of years.
Oh, absolutely.
Let's talk about the AI layoffs of 2025 and 2026, because reading through Martin's notes, this era acts as the ultimate brutal stress test for this entire concept.
Yeah, what's fascinating here is how quickly and publicly the narrative collapsed. I mean, across those 2 years, we saw a massive wave of AI-driven restructuring.
Like, how big of a wave are we talking?
We are talking well over 100,000 roles slashed in the last 12 months.
Wow, over 100,000.
Yeah. And the profound irony is that many of the companies leading these cuts were the exact same tech giants and startups that had most aggressively marketed themselves as people-first utopias.
The whole we are a family kind of vibe. And the cognitive dissonance was just jarring. I remember watching the HR communications roll out in real time. The corporate jargon was just working overtime to mask what was actually happening. Oh, the memos were unbelievable.
Right. Companies were releasing memos talking about strategic realignments and workforce optimization and synergy leveling.
Right. Anything but saying the word layoffs.
Exactly. But eventually you look at the sheer numbers, and leaders just had to admit the mechanistic truth. The knowledge work could be automated by a large language model. It was cheaper, so the human roles had to go.
Yeah, the AI capability overhang completely unmasked the industry. You saw companies that offered lavish perks and mental health days and endless rhetoric about employee well-being suddenly executing mass Zoom firing.
Which is just brutal and has nothing to do with putting people first.
It really is. And the lesson there is that you simply cannot credibly tell people they are everything, that they are family, that they are your highest priority on a Monday, and then tell them they are completely redundant via an algorithmic efficiency on a Tuesday.
It doesn't compute.
No. The AI era exposed the slogan because it proved that when the economic machine finds a cheaper, faster way to operate, the machine will always prioritize its own efficiency over the people. I have to push back slightly, though, or at least play devil's advocate for a second. If a company suddenly has access to technology that does the work of 50 people in 10 seconds, they have to adapt.
Sure.
Or their competitors will just crush them. They kind of had no choice, right?
That is exactly the point. They had no choice. But if you have no choice but to automate roles to survive, it proves you never put people first. You put survival first.
Oh, wow. Okay, I see what you mean.
Yeah, the crime wasn't adapting to the technology. The crime was the preceding years of dishonest marketing that convinced everyday employees their jobs were safe. Just because the company supposedly valued their humanity above the bottom line.
Okay, so what does this all mean for leaders who do actually genuinely care? If the comforting slogan is dead and the economic machine is inherently ruthless, how do we actually care for people without lying to them?
That is the million-dollar question.
Right, because if I am a new manager and I'm hiring my first team, I don't want to bring them into a cynical meat grinder where they feel like disposable cogs.
Nobody wants that.
But I also know I can't promise them absolute safety. So where is the line?
Well, to solve that, we have to completely reframe the why behind taking care of employees. We have to strip away the moral posturing and look at raw operational logic.
Okay, raw operational logic. Give me an example.
Martin's notes include a brilliant first-hand story about exactly this. Years ago, he had a sit-down conversation with the head of sustainability at a massive multinational consumer goods business.
Now, when you hear the title head of sustainability at a consumer goods company, my immediate assumption is, environmental charity.
Exactly.
You assume their mandate is buying carbon offsets, reducing plastic packaging, maybe planting some trees.
Yeah, that is exactly what Martin assumed going into the meeting. But the executive provided a massive paradigm shift. His real mandate wasn't just about the environment.
What was it?
His mandate was the operational sustainability of the company itself.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, his job was to ensure the business remained healthy enough to manufacture and sell products for the next 50 years.
Okay, but how does that mandate translate to how they treat their everyday workforce?
It translated to massive investments in the communities where his supply chain and workforce lived. He poured resources into ensuring those towns had clean drinking water, solid infrastructure, and basic health clinics.
Wow, that's huge.
It is. But he made it very clear. He wasn't doing this out of a sense of corporate charity or because it looked good on a brochure.
Then why do it?
He did it because a workforce dealing with dysentery or failing infrastructure cannot show up to work. Absenteeism spikes, the factories halt, and the company dies. A business that protects its supply of human capital is fundamentally protecting itself.
Okay, that is a profound shift in motivation. It's not about being a savior. It's about mutual survival.
Exactly. That executive never once pretended to put people first. He put the company's survival first.
Right.
But he understood that aggressively caring for his people was the necessary mechanism to secure that survival. That is the core lesson for any manager listening right now.
Because stripping away people first doesn't mean you stop caring.
Not at all. It means you take care of your people because you have a clear-eyed, mature view of what actually keeps the business functioning.
I see the distinction. It removes the martyrdom of the HR slogan and replaces it with an adult contract.
Exactly. You matter to the operational success of the company, therefore the company invests in you.
Which leads us perfectly into the practical application. If we are throwing out the old slogan and the fake promises, how do we rebuild that contract? Because Martin's notes outline 5 concrete, jargon-free alternatives to the people first lie.
Yeah, they give a very clear playbook.
So how do leaders actually implement these? Like, what's step 1?
Well, the first alternative is the fastest way to build real credibility. You have to kill the unkeepable slogan and replace it with a keepable promise.
Make a keepable promise.
Okay,
Okay.
you stop making grand declarations like you come before everything because, as we discussed, the market won't let you keep that. Instead, you make a commitment that you can fulfill regardless of the macroeconomic environment.
Okay, give me an example of a keepable promise that survives a market crash.
A perfect example is, we will always tell you the truth about where the company stands.
Oh, I like that.
Or, we promise to never surprise you with bad news if we saw it coming. You can keep those promises during a record profit year, and you can keep those promises when you are filing for bankruptcy.
Because it anchors the culture in reality rather than marketing.
Precisely.
Okay, so that sets the foundation. But trust isn't just about communication, right? It's about money.
Always.
If the company exists to serve the shareholder, how do you fix the fundamental friction between the employee's interest and the shareholder's return?
Well, if we connect this to the bigger picture, you have to give people a real stake. You have to align the incentives so that the employee and the shareholder are no longer in conflict.
Which makes total sense in theory.
Right. The ultimate version of this is full employee ownership. But for most companies, that just isn't feasible. So you look at tools like profit-sharing pools or something called phantom equity.
Okay, let's pause and define phantom equity. Because that sounds like complex financial engineering that a new manager at a mid-sized company wouldn't know how to navigate. How does that practically work?
It sounds complicated, but it is actually a very elegant solution. Phantom equity gives an employee a contractual right to the cash value of a certain number of shares.
But without the actual stock.
Exactly, without the company actually having to issue real stock or give away voting rights. If the company's value goes up, the phantom shares go up. If the company is sold, the employee gets a payout just like a shareholder would.
So the test is really simple. Does an ordinary employee materially win when the company wins?
That is the exact metric.
Because so often, a company will have a record-breaking quarter, the executives have their massive bonus tiers, the shareholders get a dividend, and the everyday employee gets, what, a catered pizza lunch and a 2% cost of living adjustment.
Yeah, pizza party for record profits. And that is exactly when the employee realizes they're just a cog. But if you implement genuine profit sharing or phantom equity, suddenly the employee and the shareholder are pulling in the exact same direction. The friction just dissolves.
That's a game changer. But if you align the financial stakes, you also have to align the financial visibility. Which brings us to the third alternative, opening the books.
This one is interesting.
And I have to aggressively challenge this one, because if I am running a business and I start sharing our actual math on a regular cadence, showing the entire team our shrinking runway, our tight margins, the aggressive moves our competitors are making, isn't that just going to induce massive panic?
It's the most common fear leaders have.
Right, because most everyday employees are not financial analysts. If I tell them we only have 8 months of cash left, my top performers are going to update their resumes and jump ship immediately.
It is a valid fear, but it fundamentally misunderstands human psychology. The unknown is what causes panic. Whispers, rumors, closed-door executive meetings, that causes panic. Sharing the actual unfiltered financial reality does the exact opposite. It builds foundational trust.
Really? even if the news is bad.
Especially the news is bad. By shielding them, you are basically treating them like children. If you treat your team like adults and regularly show them the revenue, the customer acquisition costs, the pressures facing the business, you are giving them the necessary context of the machine they work inside.
I guess it's the difference between treating your employees like a co-pilot with full access to the dashboard dials versus treating them like passengers blindfolded in the back seat.
I love that. Yeah.
Because if the plane hits turbulence, the blindfolded passenger panics. They have no idea what's happening. But the co-pilot reads the instruments and helps you navigate.
That is the perfect analogy.
Right.
And here is the operational mechanism of why this is so critical. When you eventually have to make a hard decision, say a 10% reduction in force or freezing all promotions, it lands as context they already possessed.
It's not a surprise.
Exactly. It is the logical, albeit painful, conclusion to a math problem they have been watching you solve on the whiteboard for the last 6 months. It doesn't feel like a shocking out-of-the-blue betrayal.
So open books act as like the single best inoculation against the massive backlash that usually follows corporate layoffs.
100%.
Okay, that reframes the entire concept of transparency. It isn't about oversharing. It's about providing the data necessary for mutual survival.
Precisely.
So we've established keepable promises, real stakes, and open books. The fourth alternative is about decision-making. Giving real voice without faking democracy.
Yes.
What does faking democracy look like in a corporate setting?
Well, a lot of well-meaning progressive companies fall into this trap. They think that rejecting the old hierarchical model means they have to operate by consensus.
So everyone gets a say in everything.
Right. They start holding literal elections for project leads or sending out company-wide surveys to vote on every single strategic initiative.
Sounds exhausting.
It is, and Martin's notes are very clear on this. While that sounds utopian, it almost never scales. It creates endless bottlenecks, political factions, and a complete diffusion of accountability.
Because at the end of the day, a business isn't a democracy. Someone has to carry the fiduciary risk.
Exactly.
So how do you give employees a voice without falling into that consensus trap?
You build real, systemic input into the workflow, but you retain the authority to make the call. And the critical mechanism here is the why.
A why?
Yeah. If you have to make an unpopular decision, let's say you are mandating a return to the office 3 days a week, or you are killing a beloved project because it isn't profitable. You have to look your team in the eye and explain the exact business reasoning.
Walk them through the math.
Exactly. You say, we heard your preference, we looked at the data, but for these 3 economic reasons, we are going this direction.
It's respecting them enough to explain the mechanics of the decision rather than just issuing a top-down mandate. Voice means their input was genuinely analyzed, not that their input dictates the outcome.
That's it, exactly.
Which leads us to the final and perhaps most intense part of this new playbook. The fifth alternative, pre-committing to how you will behave when things get hard.
This is the absolute gold standard from an HR and leadership perspective. Do not wait for the crisis to decide who you are.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Because the advice here is to write the rules of the downturn during the economic boom. It sounds almost like drafting a prenuptial agreement for employment.
That is exactly what it is. You write the prenup when you love each other and everyone is acting rationally.
Right.
If you are a leader, you need to decide right now, in writing, what your downturn plan is.
Like specifically what kinds of things?
Like if the market crashes tomorrow and we lose 30% of our revenue, how exactly do we handle the fallout? What are our minimum notice periods for layoffs? What is our baseline formula for severance?
Oh, so literally spelling out the worst case scenario.
Yeah. What is the exact sequence of communication? Who takes the first pay cuts?
But why is writing it down in advance so critical? Why not just promise to be, as generous as possible when the time comes?
Because when the crisis actually hits, the sheer financial terror will make leadership want to cut corners. The board will pressure the CEO to slash severance to protect the remaining cash.
Survival mode kicks in.
Exactly.
Of course.
By pre-committing in writing, you bind your own hands. You create an objective standard to hold yourself to when your worst instincts kick in.
It removes the temptation to panic and act selfishly.
Precisely. It changes the fundamental promise of the company. The promise is no longer the lie of, you will always be first. The new promise is, when the hard call inevitably comes, we are going to be honest, we are going to be fair, and here is exactly what that fairness looks like in writing today.
Wow. So what does this all mean when you step back and look at the whole picture?
Well,
like if a new manager or a seasoned executive actually internalizes this, if they throw the Helvetica slogan in the trash and instead make keepable promises, if they give their team real financial stakes through profit sharing, open the books so everyone sees the math, provide a real voice while owning the hard decisions, and pre-commit to a fair downturn plan, what kind of culture do they actually end up with?
what's fascinating is that they end up with a company that actually looks exactly like what people first originally promised. The culture feels deeply respectful. The everyday employees feel valued, they feel secure in their standing, and they are highly motivated to push the business forward.
But the architecture holding that culture up is completely different.
Yes, because it is honest. It is built on the actual economic reality of the business rather than a marketing fantasy. And honesty, unlike a cheap facade, can actually bear weight. It survives contact with reality.
Which brings us right back to where we started today, that career page, that break room wall with the nice paint job and the comforting words.
It does. And this raises an important question for you, the listener, to mull over long after this deep dive ends.
Lay it on us.
If the true measure of a company isn't the slick slogan they paint on the wall during a highly profitable quarter, but rather the quiet written plans they make for how they will treat you during a market crash, what does your current employer's communication style right now tell you about your future? That's this lie. If it got under your skin, good. The next one drops soon, and the best way to make sure you don't miss it is to join the mailing list at liesofhr.com. See you then.
Lies of HR.
The stories HR tells itself.